A lot from, obviously, larger firms here, GE, and Edwards, and Medtronic. How do you guys in the smaller companies deal with these issues? And I know we have smaller companies here.
Painfully.
Trust me, it's painful for these guys. Don't think it isn't. What are the challenges that you guys have? No ability to leverage?
Our supplier quality system is sort of new since I've gotten the company we're at. It's about 7 years in development. When I joined the company, they really didn't have much in place. And the biggest problem was that a lot of the activities were the design engineers. And a lot of change were taking place without our knowledge. And we would find out when it came into receiving, a change took place or a process, and after going through a lot of problems with products, recalls, we're finally now getting to the point where they understand that they have to go through quality systems. Now we have a really good system in place where every supplier has to take and go through our change control process, and if they don't, then they get issued a CAPA. And so the biggest challenge is identifying what is a change. We just had one that a supplier changed an end mill. We had a product, and it was a corner cutting end mill. You put a radius end mill in there, we have a recall. So it's the biggest challenge is what is the change.
How many do you find, especially in the R&D organization, and many of them have all their favorite suppliers and suppliers that they don't like? There is no such thing. How many of them use use their business credit cards and bypass your system?
Not anymore.
Are you sure?
Yep. Took them away.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I can't tell you how many of my clients, lo and behold, how did you get that? They just order on the credit card. Totally bypass the whole system. And then invariably result in problems. Really?
So I would just add that that's probably our biggest challenge in implementing supplier controls, is the fact that we also have purchasing cards in place, and beyond that there's expense reimbursement avenues and all kinds of avenues for things to infiltrate into the organization. Those things that should probably be in scope and aren't, because they're happening all over. So when you start to stretch things out even further, it becomes incredibly challenging, and shutting off that spigot is a big issue that we're trying to tackle right now within our organization.
Any others from a small business perspective, a smaller manufacturer's perspective?
Frank Fosian from Alon. We're so small we don't even have a released product yet. So, but in a lot of
opportunity to grow.
Yes, it is. A lot of your organizations are probably larger than my whole company. So when you talk about our supplier quality group, you're looking at me and one other person who take this on, along with the support of our one purchasing person and all of engineering that gets involved. So we qualify as suppliers now. As far as change right now, the way we handle change relative to product coming in, because we're obviously going through all of our qualification testing, and things have to be frozen while we're going through that, and then we're still developing for the next revision. So we have specs that are very specifically defined as what the supplier is, what the criteria, what the acceptance criteria is, and everything comes into receiving. And I'm not as blind to say that people don't buy things on credit cards and I find them. That happens, and it happens in big companies as well as small companies. But you just have to create the culture where when someone wants to make a change, they're just communicating within the organization what they're doing, and then you, at least as part of your organization, have a chance to become part of the process when it's happening, as opposed to finding out later. That's much more difficult in very large organizations. When there's 20 people in the company, it's pretty easy to talk to everybody almost every day. So it's you can really find out what's going on. So.
Anybody else care to share? So this morning we heard from Steve,
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does the change control differ when you're working with manufacturers or suppliers here in the United States versus, let's say, Asia?
I would, yeah, my experience is we try not to make it different. So we require them to use the same set of tools and the same reporting requirements and the same quality requirements. I guess the challenge is the translation and defining clearly the change. That's what drove it home for me, was the translation barrier. What we say and what we think we mean in the U.S. doesn't mean the same thing globally. So you have to be very careful about what you ask for and say, these are the finite things that I want you to report changes on, and everything you leave off, they change and you don't get to know about it. So you have to be really careful.
How many of your firms do business in third world countries and do not have a permanent presence to provide some level of daily oversight or routine oversight? You still depend on suppliers and don't have a routine, do not have a presence in those countries to provide that level of oversight. Nobody? One?
Two.
Two? Three. Working markets. That's fine. Sorry. Politically correct. Sorry. So this morning we heard from Rita that when necessary, she holds, yes, sir.
Steve, this was from a perspective of a small company. It was your question earlier. And it says our biggest issue is getting cooperation from larger critical suppliers. For example, in regards to signing quality agreements or allowing us to come with an audit, as we may be a tiny percentage of their business. Could ask those from smaller companies if they have the same issues and how they handle that.
And actually, that's a question that I sort of developed later on, and we can go to it right now. So we heard sort of where Rita was coming from this morning, where she holds firm against suppliers and leverages their ability to continue to do business and the importance of, and probably the volume of a firm like a Medtronic and Edwards and GE. How do the small businesses deal with that? What kind of difficulties are you having, especially in doing business with suppliers who are not necessarily device oriented? I mean, we do know that the device industry uses suppliers that might not want to be in the healthcare business, don't want that liability. What are you seeing from that perspective? The very same question that Rick just read from our virtual attendee. Certainly you all have experiences that way. Sir? There's a respondent to be.
I think that as a very small business, you're sometimes forced to go away from the direct supplier and through the distributor chain, which we've already talking about. The big production companies don't even want to deal with you and do business with you and force you through this distribution chain, which I think makes it even more difficult. I also know from past experience it's a very real situation that we're in. My company has more recently been minority purchased by a very large medical company, and now that I'm able to name drop, so to speak, the attitudes of those suppliers change dramatically. It's a very real situation.
So we still deal with people that want new business and they see dollar signs, but they don't want to deal with the requirements that we need and require. So we spend a lot of time trying to educate those people, and through the education process, they still want to be involved. But when it comes to rubber hitting the ground or road, we get a lot of pushback, and we're changing the philosophy that when we get enough pushback, game over. We're not using these people anymore. And we started to ruffle a lot of feathers within my company, and people don't like it, but Steve and I talked a lot. It's the new way in which we're going to do business. You're not going to like it, but